Good morning, everyone. Welcome to April. Happy April 1st. No, this is not April Fools. I think we've all had enough sarcasm and jokes for a while, so we'll focus on some good stuff and some positivity today. This is our second Directors Roundtable. Hopefully many of you were able to join us last week. I'm joined by Accetta from Stanford University to facilitate today's conversation. And we also have as a very special guest, Stacy Hall from University of New Hampshire, who many of you know and know how special she is. But she's had a pretty unique circumstance at her campus that she's going to talk to us a little bit about today. Earlier today, if you were already in your email, you may have seen a quick survey come out from me. We sent it to all the directors or senior leaders from the campuses who are engaged with NIRSA. This is a super fast survey, 9 questions, should take you 5 to 10 minutes. It's really an attempt to get a lay of the land. What's the state of campus recreation right now? There's some questions around facilities, around paying staff, around fees, around some of the information from your administrator about how long this is going to go on. We wanted to get an initial of the land. This is going to be a fast survey. We'll turn results around on Monday and then based into some of those topics going forward. The goal here is to get you information about what's going on across NIRSA to help inform the kinds of things you might be thinking about or considering. It'll also help us facilitate the connections amongst all of you and also in formats like this around who's got what going on that may be useful for us to talk about. So if you've got 5 minutes in the next 2 days, please pop into that survey and take a quick pass through it. Let's see. Other rules for today, just a quick reminder, we're recording this session. It'll be available later today. We have a quick URL, nirsa.org/motion, where this and all the Ideas in Motion roundtables are available. Make sure you stay muted. We'll be watching out for Zoom bombing. Hopefully we won't be subject to that today. I don't know if any of you have had that happen yet. It's a thing now. Please use the chat box for questions and comments. Alex and I will be watching that as you share different things. We may call on you to say more to the whole group. I see that the chat box is already going, so that's good. And then of course, in between these meetings, you can use NIRSA Connect for further discussion and resource sharing. We've been really pleased to see the huge uptick in activity on Connect as all of you are connecting in this new virtual world. Oh, wrong way. And lastly, just quickly, you know, this is a safe space. This is a space where we respect everyone's concerns. Different areas of the country are at very different places with their response to COVID-19. We're going to focus this conversation on our role as higher ed professionals. We're not going to get into politics and, you know, health recommendations, things like that. So I think that's about it from me. I'm going to turn it over to Alex now, who's going to kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. So here's some of the topics that we've been thinking about that we'll try to cover. And then if you've got ideas, if you've got questions, like Pam said, we'll be checking this chat box. So here's what we're thinking. We're going to talk a little bit and love to hear from you about how you're adapting your leadership style, what you're observing about what you need, what you're observing about how your world is changing as directors. I think in our roles, it's important that we get a little bit of information about what you're being asked to do around forecasting this year, what you're hearing about budgets next year, how you're beginning to adapt to that. We're going to talk a little bit and maybe have some of you share what you're hearing and we'll hear about this, about what your people above you are saying, right? What is happening in higher ed in general as we look to be leaders in higher education. I think Stacy will give us some good examples of that. And then, you know, I'm going to probably try to ask some folks regionally. I've been going through the chat, seeing who's on here, to see if there's sort of things we can learn from people that have already moved through some of this. So that those of you who are, you know, just entering into shelter in places or just entering into a new phase, there might be some learning from colleagues who've already been sort of doing some of this work for, you know, 14 to 17 days. I feel like I've already sort of gone through 3 or 4 different phases of this. They are maybe almost linked to phases of grief, but similarly, they're phases of how my work has changed. And so we'll talk about that a little bit today. But we're going to turn this over. Stacy, I don't see you on my screen, but I saw you on the Zoom group. So Stacy Hall is at the University of New Hampshire. You obviously know she was a past president. And this queued up last week where she was working with the National Guard in New Hampshire to set her building up. And so we thought it'd be helpful to hear from Stacy, sort of her experience there, what that was like, what they're doing in New Hampshire, and then we'll ask her a couple other questions, and then we'll roll into things for everybody else. Stacy?
Morning. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. Maybe you can see me now. I don't know.
We can see you.
It's actually really awesome to see so many friendly faces, because one of the biggest bummers about not having an annual conference is not being able to see each other. And I know we can't hug each other, but at least we can see each other and support each other through this. I appreciate the opportunity to share the story of what we've been through here in New Hampshire the last couple of weeks. Honestly, New Hampshire as a state has been not on the cutting edge of leadership as far as government-wise in terms of deciding what our institution, being a state institution, should be doing or not. So our governor actually jumped in on some of the decisions that happened higher up. But I think I should mention, starting 4 weeks ago, our emergency group on campus got together and talked about different scenarios that we anticipated seeing. And many of those are happening on your campus as well, I'm sure, such as where are we going to quarantine students? And when students come back from spring break, if they need to isolate and they don't have a place to go, do we create spaces on campus for that? And we looked at the rec center for some of those elements. I also oversee our student union right now, and really neither one of those buildings is conducive for that, because this scenario really is looking for buildings that have a bedroom and a bathroom attached and no sharing of spaces, right? And so as we started to get into this and dusting off our old plans for like evacuations, which I know many of us have supported evacuations on campus, especially in the short time. But this one is just so different. So after those initial meetings of thinking, okay, I don't think campus rec is really going to get called upon. And then as things evolved over time, Alex, I like your description of going through kind of different cycles here of how we're approaching our work. So last 2 Sundays ago, I get a call from my boss saying, we're going to turn the rec center into a hospital. And that had never been put on the table before. And I don't know of any other institution that has switched a rec center into a hospital. So on Monday, we met with the National Guard. And in this area, it was representatives of 4 different hospitals who are in complete competition with each other. And so those 4 representatives had never met each other, never talked to each other, but yet those 4 people are the ones that are supposed to be indicating what the needs of the community are, and then therefore the university, the National Guard would rally together to meet the needs of the hospital. So it took until Wednesday afternoon for the hospitals to really figure out what is it that the hospitals anticipate needing. And one thing that was interesting to learn is that our hospitals here already have a game plan to expand their capacity within their walls already. So for example, if a hospital currently has a capacity of 100 beds, they're already changing their facilities around to maybe accommodate 150 or 180 or 200. So that was helpful for me to learn about, I guess, because what we converted here is the backup space to that backup space. So as all these stats people are doing all this modeling of how many beds are we going to need, it was helpful to see like what are our goals that we're trying to accomplish. So from Wednesday to Friday, we created a 253 bed kind of pseudo hospital. And what our hospitals ended up asking for is their approach here, which is different than some other places, is that the hospitals themselves will focus primarily on the sickest people. And then as folks get better in the hospital and more sick people come in, they want a place to send those folks who maybe need another day or two in a hospital, but are getting better. So our facility here it's called an alternate, it's not alternate care, it's alternate transition site. So that's the technical word that the hospital folks use. So we're a transition from, and the patients will actually be technically discharged in order to avoid a whole lot of bureaucratic and financial red tape. So the patients will be discharged from the hospital, brought to the rec center for a duration of time they don't even know, whether somebody might stay for 2 days or 2 weeks, depending on what kind of resources they have to go to after us. So as the campus community, we felt that felt a little easier to manage, because trying to picture bringing in 50 people on ventilators, honestly, it's just really shocking to think that our facilities would be used that way. And the conversation started there of, you're going to be hosting the sickest people. And I think there are some other sites that are set up that way, which then leads to the even worse conversation that I had last week, like 3 times, which is backup morgue capacity. Do I need to turn the ice floor on to create a cold space to act as a morgue because our morgue capacity here is so small? And just, it's weird to say that even out loud to you all. I mean, it's just such a challenging situation that our communities are dealing with. And yeah, so that's a little summary. I don't want to take up too much time, but if that provides things that you want to learn more about, if you want to ask more questions. I know several folks have reached out to us already, so if you want to ask questions here, Alex, if you want to field those, or if you want to connect with me offline as well, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, thanks, Stacy. Yeah, I'll just acknowledge it's thanks for sharing that, and you know, that fear of what's happening is real, and I think it's important as leaders that we both acknowledge it internally, right, and give ourselves space to have our own feelings, but then as leaders of others, really try to have empathy and help our staff make it through too. And I appreciate you being so transparent with how it struck you. So I haven't seen too many questions. If somebody has a particular question for Stacy, I'll give a few more minutes to see if there's things that you wanted to follow up with her on, and I'll watch the chat too.
Alex, if I could jump in, I'm seeing a couple folks write about sharing some of the planning documents. So
yeah, I see that too.
National Guard has a shared Google Drive with us, and I'll see if I can get permission to share that final documentation, because I think it would be really, really helpful to share with others.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Stacy. So I'm watching the chat too, and Josh Downing, you just wrote some interesting stuff. We were going to phase into at some point a conversation around budget planning and what people are hearing. And because it was just in the chat, if Josh, if you want to kind of state what's happening on your campus, and then if people have questions about budget thinking, why don't we shift to that for a little bit?
And before I get into that, Stacy, wow, thank you for sharing, and wow, things never thought they'd have to be considered. Yeah, so just for a little context for everyone, Butler University is a private liberal in Indianapolis, Indiana, with about 4,800 students. Very much tuition-driven university. We received a video message from our president just a few minutes ago before this call. And what I appreciate about him is that he's not sugarcoating anything. He's getting straight to the point, and sharing that he's promising that faculty and staff will get full-time faculty staff will get benefits and pay until the end of the semester. And then afterwards, there's going to have to be some really hard decisions that are going to have to be made. There's likely the overall operating budget for the university is going to have to be cut 20 to 30%, with full-time faculty and staff pay and benefits equating to about 60% of the overall operating budget for the university. So simply stating the fact that senior administration is already in discussions to cut their pay, and then there's likely going to be cuts across the board, faculty side and staff side. So as we head into that in uncharted territory, I'm just, kind of curious if anyone else is hearing that. If you are, what are your plans, thinking forward with the potential of possibility of a reduction in staff? Do we have contingency plans in place for this? All those types of things. And then on the other side of that is and maybe this is another part of the conversation, Alex, is revenue generating ideas. Are there ways that we can think through to help with increasing revenue for the university through programs and services they already have, or entirely innovative ideas? So just want to put that out there, and I will mute myself.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for leading that off. I'd love to hear from a couple of people at private schools and a couple of people at state schools. I'm observing some sort of not totally different ways, but as we track who's able to pay, for instance, part-time employees and who's not, I do seem to be seeing some different strategies around that. So I'm wondering if there's maybe a couple people from a state school. I see David Bowles. I was going to ask you a question later. Kim Schmidt. I know there's a lot of you at state schools. Chris, I see you. So maybe somebody from a state school could talk about what they're seeing. Maybe a big school and a small school. If not, I'll call on you like a teacher.
This is Scott Haynes. I'm part of the SUNY system.
Thank you, Scott.
The largest system in New York State. So
great, thanks.
What we're doing right now is taking lead from the governor. But we're paying all of our student employees, both work study and student employees. It's 2 weeks at a time, and so they're all being paid. All of our part-time folks are being paid. All full-time folks. We've been furloughed about 10 years ago. I suspect that's going to happen, where we're going to lose a percentage of our paychecks as we start to try to recover from budgets. We were fortunate the last 3 or 4 years to start building reserves up. So hopefully there'll be some money coming back, but we rely heavily on revenue. My department only has a half dozen lines that are state lines. The rest of them are all paid through different revenue sources, whether it be from rentals or from student fees. And so there's discussion of paying back the students, refunding the students potentially half a year or half a semester. The college was shut down officially by the governor on the 19th of March. And so that was right in the middle of our spring break. No direction at this point. All I know is that I'm definitely going to be losing a pretty big chunk of my student fee, which actually pays my student employees. So it's a double whammy. In addition to paying for, other professional staff that help to support the program. So, the other thing that's impacting, I just had to tell one of my vendors that I'm not buying equipment this year. Knowing that, I'm going to have some large expenses from not generating revenue to the student fee, and then expectation I'm paying for all of our staff throughout this period of time. So it's going to come down to, it's trickling down to my vendors already that I traditionally, have a 5-year cycle where I replace equipment.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. The ripple effects, right, are enormous, and for me, almost a little overwhelming when I start thinking about the ripple effects of that stuff. Lori Braden, Louisiana State, what's happening? You might still be on mute, but I know you're on here.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.
There you go. Hey, Lori.
Hi, how is everybody? One of the unique solutions that we found that we're going to, and this hasn't been announced publicly, we're still working with Stratcom to message this to our students. So I am asking for you to, keep this in the confidence of 129 people, which I know won't happen probably, but that's okay too. I'm still going to share it. One of the lessons that we learned when we did our fee increase in 2012, one of the ways that we got students on board with that fee was to tell our students that for as many semesters as they paid the fee increase while we were under construction, and mind you, we continued all services and never shut down, so they still got to use the rec center, but the fee was increasing over a 3-year period at $45 increments on July 1 for a 3-year period. But for the time that they paid any portion of that fee increase, they would get that many semesters as an alum for free. And so what we are doing in this period is for the students that got basically a half a semester, our long semester fee is $200. So we calculated if we had done a refund, it would have been at about $101. That would have been about a $2.5 million hit in our budget. And what we decided to do is, my suggestion to my vice president was that we do a COVID-19 extension. So every student who is paid this semester, we are still delivering one online programs. We'll be starting with our Zoom classes for group fitness. We have intramural tournaments going on, just like everyone else does. It's some version of those things. So we're still delivering content. And we're still paying students who can work remotely. And then to all of our students, we'll be messaging that they will have the opportunity upon graduation to have a 1 semester membership. We'll also allow them, if they are, let's say that they take 1 class in Baton Rouge this summer, if we're back, or next summer, that will allow them to, because when you take 1 class, you're not a full-time student. So our fee is a mandatory fee. It's a required fee. So I can't waive it for them. But if we have a lot of students that stay in Baton Rouge in the summer and work and want to use the rec center. So they want to use their COVID-19 semester in a summer, we're going to allow them to do that. If they want to wait and use it when they graduate, they can do that. We have this down to a pretty good science and how we've articulated it. The first round that we did this, it was in motion a few times. We met with student government on a few different versions. We amended it, in listening to students. So we feel really confident that we can administer this. When I have a meeting later today, and after this goes public, I'm more than glad to share how we have activated that. You could go to our website and look under, it's called a fee supported membership, and it explains how it works. I think this version will be just a bit different, but that's what we've done to creatively manage our resources.
Thanks, Lori. Yeah, there seem to be so many ways to try to continue as normal as we can, right? And know that it feels like it's still all going to change, right? So how long are we forecasting? I saw there was there was a thread early on talking about, there was a couple of folks in the chat talking about already, how do we ramp back up, right? And I don't know that we're necessarily there yet. I feel sort of like, this could be 4 weeks, could be 6 weeks, could be 8 weeks. At some point, we'll certainly need a Zoom meeting on how do we ramp back up, right? And what are those strategies like Lori is sharing that we can uniquely situate ourselves to try to weather the coming fiscal changes. There might be time for sort of one more comment on that section, if anybody's interested. If not, we can move on to the next topic. Okay, the last thing I'll share on that is it's interesting having just come from a big state school and now being at a private school. I know, the perception is that Stanford has all this money and, we walk on gold-plated streets. But I can tell you that it is super tight here too. And what I realized, which is why I like Josh, thank you for sharing it, is it'd be interesting to see over time the difference between how private schools have to weather this and how state schools have to weather this. Our university immediately went to protecting full-time employees. And we could talk all day. There'll be great presentations in the future about ethical choices people make in times of emergency to keep your institutions together. But it definitely gave me some empathy to try to figure out, people seem to be thinking about how do I even keep it together, right? And some of our colleagues in very, very small schools that are in higher ed, we're already facing some pretty difficult budget times, are going to be even more challenged. I think we just need to have empathy for everybody because you never quite know what's under the hood at all these schools. Okay.
Hey, Alex,
yeah.
Greg Jordan here.
Go for it.
How you doing? Yeah, good morning, everyone. Certainly agree with everything that's been said so far. One other thing that I think is relevant here at Oakland that could help is on the conversation is tracking future enrollment. We are a state school located 30 miles north of Detroit. We are 3 weeks away from the end of our winter semester. And last Monday on March 23rd, we began the enrollment process for summer of 2020, as well as the academic year for 20 through fall and winter next year. So for a full year. And so the good news is, at least at our institution, students are registering at a similar and actually slightly ahead of pace than same time last year, in the enrollment cycle. So I think as we are all concerned about future, and even though we're a state school, Michigan is 50th in the country is supporting state schools. So we're about as much a private school as anybody else. So we're so tuition heavy. But certainly tracking and watching enrollment as a prediction can certainly impact the direction that the institution starts heading with regard to some of these budget scenarios that are all likely scenarios. But I think enrollment would be a really important thing to track.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, right? In the last recession, we all, or many state schools and schools, benefited from a recession because, right, people went back to school, they got laid off, they went back to school. But it'll be interesting, Greg, to see if that happens during this time, how the federal government, motivates us to do that or not do that, and what it looks like. So that'll be great. Pam, I just, who is that?
Deb Johnson. Sorry. Hi,
hey, Deb,
everyone.
you're on my list.
I wanted to add something to that. All of us have been tracking enrollment data, and we know that 2025 is supposed to be a troublesome year for higher education. One of the things that's been on my mind a lot is how is all of this going to add to that ripple and cause even a bigger impact? And, the focus has been on that, but kind of changing that dialogue. I know with the UC system, we just started our quarter on Monday. And so, we have students that are really upset that they're paying tuition and fees for a quarter that they're at home. And so UC is kind of working through all of this, but the voice is getting louder and, it's a unified approach, but then also the conversations are happening that we are expecting furloughs and stuff rolling out this week. And so just as we look at that, just kind of, I think we need to keep that in mind for all of our schools going down the road. This is a hard time right now. The financial outcome's going to be pretty catastrophic on a institutional level, but then we have another looming situation behind it. And so just, that's something that's been on my mind.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. Hey,
Alex?
Pam, I just want,
Yeah.
Mark Ritter, I see you.
Yeah,
South
we
Carolina.
actually just had a staff meeting this morning with the directors of student affairs, and we're looking at ramping up our retention efforts already for next fall. We're pretty tuition based too. We don't get a whole lot of state money. And we find that the concern maybe is that if students realize that they can do a lot of this virtual learning, that they may not decide to come to campus or find it easier to go elsewhere. So we're trying to ramp up our retention efforts right now.
Yeah, that seems to be a theme. I think you've seen that. People are talking about that in the chat, and yeah, that's one of the big unknowns for everybody. What does it do to us? We've all now figured out how to do online classes, and you look at, Peloton cornered the market for fitness, at least for now, but I went on there. I'm not that impressed. I think we can do better. So yeah, we're going to have to innovate for sure. Hey, Pam, I just wanted to offer you an opportunity if there was something that you struck you, or you want to move us to a different conversation, or.
Yeah, no, I think pivoting a little bit more on this, what are you hearing from your presidents and your senior leaders? I think the enrollment conversation is interesting. I have to say, I think I'm a little hopeful because it feels like in the recession, we, higher ed for the most part, just wanted to wait around till things went back to normal. Right. And I think there was a lot of schools that, especially state schools, that, when the state funding went down and it became clear it was never going back up, then they unpacked themselves. I know they did that here in Oregon from some of those restrictions and oversight, et cetera, et cetera. And so I feel like going into this, there may be more of an appetite in higher ed to actually be more innovative, not rely on external forces, and actually get more creative, right? And I think a lot of that energy is, of course, going to be driven from rec. And what I'm wondering about is, for years, we've talked about, these online students, and how could we deliver recreation to online students, or how can we deliver a quote unquote student affairs experience to online students? And it's been this, theoretical, nice to have, and it sort of gets some energy and then it goes away. But, no real groundswell of programming or even a fee structure happens that I'm aware of, right? And I feel like out of this, you're doing it, right? I mean, you're delivering recreation to online students and at-home students. And some of your partners in student affairs are doing it, right? I just was on University of Florida's website, and they've got, the virtual student union, right? Directing students to different things, including rec. So I wonder if coming out of this, is there any thought or discussion around what does a two-part fee look like? What does here's the on-campus fee because you get on-campus amenities, and here's the online student fee because now we know how to deliver an experience. It's a different experience, but we know how to deliver an experience online. And would recreation consider doing that on their own, or would they wrap it into like an online student affairs fee? I mean, there'd be a better word for it, right? But something like that. So are you hearing or thinking about any innovation like that when we come out of this?
So I'll speak to it a little bit. This is David Bowles from the University of Florida, which of course Pam just referenced. And you caught me off guard a little bit with the last comment, Pam, when you talked about, are you looking at when you come out of this? Yeah. I do think, and in fact, Darcy Burdett and I were talking about this morning, virtually, of course, that things that we are doing now to provide online virtual programming, potentially we would have liked to have done before, but we just didn't have time to do it. We didn't get it. So now we are, and this, I don't want to use this word, but forced to do it. Mm-hmm. And there's things that we're doing that we will do in the future. Now, some of you will be very entertained by the fact that registration for esports in our program in today, and we're probably going to have over 400, depending on the sport, either games or individuals. And some of you have known, I've been quoted about that particular issue. but I'm pretty excited about that. And so is my vice president. So of course, that's a good thing. Now, as far as the University of Florida officially is open and is going to remain open, and very adamant about that. Now, don't take that the wrong way. The rec centers are closed. The libraries are closed. Everything's closed. It looks like your campus does, and all of our classes are online. But they're being very protective as far as the message being put out when it comes to state money that's coming in, when it comes to the thought that and that we are still providing program for students. So therefore, we still should be getting some fees. Now, they have reduced our fees. They just put out that new fee structure the other day, and they've reduced them for summer, for the 2 sessions and the overarching session that we have in the summer. But students who are on the UF online program, as it has been set up, have not had to pay fees, but they have had the opportunity to opt in to pay fees, say if they lived in Gainesville and they wanted to come to use the rec center. And that's still going to exist for those UF online students taking those classes. But for all of those other students taking the classes virtually, they are going to be considered to be registered for regular classes as if they're on campus, and they're going to be charged these reduced fees. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine they're not going to be happy about it. Mm-hmm. And, but we do have a robust offering, and I'm not just talking about with rec sports, but throughout student affairs, and I think everybody on campus is trying to justify the collection of those fees. And understand my program gets no state money. We're completely funded by fees. Probably 80% of my budget is fees, and the rest being auxiliary. And although our wellness component is funded by health fee, and they're taking a major hit. And all of my staff, all my students, all my full-time staff, me, we're all funded by the fees. So we'll see how that's going to end up rolling out. Now, they just switched our classes to be able to be all pass-fail. They don't like to use those words, so they're satisfactory or unsatisfactory, but they're pass-fail. The thought is that the potential is we'll have more students taking classes this summer because they could, like if I'd had the opportunity to take chemistry in college, pass, fail, I'd have jumped all over it. Majors have those classes that are difficult. Students are worried about it having a negative impact on their GPA because everyone wants to go to law school or med school. And so the thought is that more will take the opportunity to do pass, fail. And I'll stop there, but I just know that Linda Knight can, she probably sat in chemistry beside me, so she can verify that statement.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I think there's, you know, we'll see, right? Like, you know, I have a very flawed crystal ball, so I don't really know what's going to happen. But, you know, I listened to this fear about, oh, the students are going to go home and take online classes and they're going to like that better. But I actually think there's a whole bunch of students who frankly don't want to be at home with their parents doing online classes. They would much rather be back on campus, enjoying all of your services and living in the dorms or off campus and having that whole traditional collegiate experience. I thought it was interesting. On Monday, we hosted a virtual roundtable called Working from Home with Kids. And the minute the student leadership team found out about it, they said, we want to do one on working from home with parents, because many of them have had to move back home with parents. So that I think was hosted on Tuesday, right? So for those of you without kids or without college students, you know, if you're kind of interested in how that's going on, how that's working for your staff, right, who may have young children at home that they're juggling, I would encourage you to go watch a few minutes of that Working from Home with Kids roundtable from Monday. Well, Alex, we also wanted to talk about new leadership styles or adapting your leadership styles. Should we pivot to that?
Yeah, I think I was just going to say that's a great segue to that. Yeah, so I think we're all learning how to operate in this new normal. When I was talking about sort of phases, right? I've been at this for about 3 weeks now, and Lori, Braden, I realized you guys closed down fairly early too. That came up last week. And here I was thinking I know we're one of the early ones, but it was good to see that others were on this too. But I thought maybe to roll this off, we could ask a couple people who've been doing this for a while. And as I've looked at the chat, I think somebody like Deb Johnson from Davis, maybe Stephanie at Cal Baptist, maybe Adam Pruitt at Facebook, maybe a couple of you might be willing to talk about what you've observed and how you've had to change your leadership. Because I think compared to some others, you might have been at this a little bit longer. And so maybe it'd be helpful to talk about these sort of stages you've gone through. And then I'm sure that's not everybody, but like Doug Ewan, I see you at Fort Lewis, and I know in Durango, they just got to sort of shutting stuff down. So maybe it'd be helpful to hear from Deb or somebody who's maybe a couple of days ahead. And so I'm going to try that strategy. Deb, do you want to start us off? And then maybe Adam, maybe Stephanie Plummer, if you're comfortable with that.
Sure, Alex. I want to talk about working from home with pets. Got a very needy one, worse than a child. No, in all seriousness, the leadership for me, I had a huge transition. 3 weeks before the virus, I got a new boss and new expectations. And so David's there too. Yeah. And we're interviewing for a new vice chancellor. So all the protocol and steps that have been going on have changed. But as a result, what I'm appreciating is where before I was a lot more involved in the department, now I'm on all of the big committees of like the pandemic committees and meeting with business and finance. And so it's elevated the tables that I sit at, which is fantastic. But at the same time, I'm having to shift my leadership style without really warning the team that it's going to be shifting. And we have adopted some techniques that are working really well. We were feeling with the quarter starting, it's like you develop all your programs and projects and you're ready to deliver, and then you don't get to deliver it. But then all of a sudden you haven't had any preparation and you have to deliver something entirely different on a moment's notice. So I'm very fortunate. Our team is very, very committed. We're using some software. We're using Microsoft Teams, and it's really great for tracking work and for seeing projects. Personally, I am not one that wants to know what everyone's doing, and it's their thing. But what it's helping me with as when campus leadership comes and says things like, what is your team doing from home? We can talk about the direct impact. Even our marching band is having rehearsals right now through technology. So, and sending that message that where all of us is basically our students' sense of belonging and how we're trying to keep that intact. So with my leadership style, I've really worked hard to let the associate directors lead their teams. And then I'm having more regular meetings with the associate directors so that I'm keeping them 100% in the loop of the voice from above, and so that they're prepared at any moment. We're using all of the visual technology. My strategies is also really positioning ourselves, which I think a lot of us do already. But meanwhile, like the marketing team may be working really hard on getting our content out, but I'm sliding everything right into the DM of campus. And so all of the campus messaging that's going out to our students, our chancellor is a huge supporter of us. Ironically, in this safe space, he pulled the chancellor card that he needs to continue to work out in the facility, even though it's closed. And so, yeah, everyone's like, oh. So we have some of that going on, but at the same time too, every time there's a message talking about academics and support, campus recreation is a key part of that message. And so my messaging really has been more about positioning and keeping us at the top of the table and ensuring that everything we're doing is being validated to try to protect us and to try to be in those frontline conversations to help guide the directions. It's interesting we all know this as you work, but we work with each other. It's seeing some of the vice chancellors and the chancellor's emails, it's one or two, it's their cohorts, right? So one or two people raise a question and they don't know the answers, then things sometimes start heading south in a big hurry. And so having a little bit more access and that credibility in those spaces to be able to answer and talk what our industry's doing, talk what the UCs are doing, as UC directors meeting to keep our, our footing strong so that, if one school ripples, everybody ripples. So in a nutshell, those are kind of some of the adjustments. And then we've added, just like everyone else, like in trying to keep the team together and supported, we've done some fun random things, like we've had coffee together. We've had, I accidentally yesterday when I was walking the dog, one of my staff sent me a text, and she's new on our team, and my phone FaceTimed her from my behind, like in my pocket. I was like, I thought she was FaceTiming me, how awkward for her, and so we had a great conversation though, and a good check-in, and we've laughed about that. So just also being real with your staff and all of this, and knowing that you're there to support them. And so I get called into meetings to advocate, and I'm doing a ton of advocating in different departments who are not being as nimble as we need to be, but I'm sure that's everybody's story. So.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. Those are some great thoughts. I found personally, Stephanie Plummer, California Baptist University. The first few days were really rough for me. I couldn't find a rhythm as a type A personality. And not to generalize, but I have a few Gen Xers on my group, and technology is not their wheelhouse. And probably I'd say in the past, they just kind of have shrugged their shoulders and said, like, it's just not it's not what I do. And now it's all we do. And I had to have a little bit of come to Jesus talk about the fact that we are trying to position ourselves as relevant and to remain relevant for the need of fees and, just our importance in what we're doing in student affairs. And so they've come around, and it's been great. I think I do a lot more check-ins with them just for their mental health and their well-being. But I've taken more of this has to get done. You're going to have to figure it out. If you have to Google how to make an Instagram live video, then do it. But we need to change how we're operating. And I've been really pleased in this last week with what their output has been. So I've been trying to be really encouraging, but I'll be honest, like my own sense of how the heck are we going to do this has made it a little bit more difficult, I feel like, to lead well. I've had to really adjust. Each of them are so different, and I've taken the mentality of meet people where they're at, but when you are doing that virtually, it's just a whole heck of a lot harder than when you can sit across from them and hug the people that need hugs and share tissues with the people that need tissues. You can see how feely I am. So I think that's been a little bit of a change. Tyler's on this call. He oversees the rec programs. His team's phenomenal in what they've put out, but we've just had to look at how we change our services and how I, do that without micromanaging them when we're all putting in reports of what we do every week. So that's been a little bit challenging. I want to make sure that they're putting stuff on that list so that we look good to administration, but I also don't want them to feel like that I'm micromanaging every little thing they're doing, even though that kind of feels like what it is, because every little thing counts now. So it's been a huge shift. I don't know that it's smooth yet, but it's definitely getting, I think, better.
Hey, Alex?
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Hey, this is Doug Ewing from Fort Lewis College, kind of building off what Stephanie was just talking about. It's been a big shift for me as well. Small program, 6 professional staff people. I'm so used to bobbing in and out of offices and talking on the spur of the moment. I found great value in teams. Originally, I thought it was going to be individuals, conversations here and there, but it turns out that our team is really involved, and I'm actually having multiple conversations at one time. So we're kind of mimicking our office lifestyle virtually, and it's really fun to see that happen with our group. We've actually we implemented yesterday an office group that's we're playing bingo. And we have different little concepts, what each other are doing in a given day. And one of our staff members is pulling a number out and said, Like today is, it's a B4. And for me, B4 is, have I worn the same set of clothes twice in a day or two days in a row? So I didn't get a mark on that one, just so you all know. But we're finding the challenge of the not having the personal touch. And how do we keep that going? Because I think all of us as rec professionals, we all want to have that personal touch and interaction on a constant basis, because that's how we work. In addition, we are also involving our student workers. We're paying our student workers till the end of the semester. And so we're involving our student workers in a lot of our conversations. So they're staying active in our team as well. So just a quick snapshot. I don't want to go too much in depth, but we're finding our methods of staying personal virtually through Teams.
Alex, this is Linda. I'd like to add one thing, because we've been doing it about 3 weeks also now. And one of the things I really appreciated our president recently just said is now we have moved from a sprint, because we all had to get things done quickly, very, very quickly, to a marathon. This is going to keep going for a while, and how we navigate our teams is going to look very different. So at first I was more, okay, we got to get this done, and we got to get this up, and we've got to have this on, because we have to be relevant. We want to make sure we're relevant. But then it's kind of like, okay, now how do I got to take care of them also, because now they're settling into, with all schools being closed, they've got kids, they've got issues, they've got whatever they have. But so how do I look at the marathon, you know? So do they really have to work an 8-hour day? No, they don't. You know, you get some work done, but they also have to take care of themselves, and whatever that looks like. For some people might be reading an article, some people might be going working out. I don't know that I really care, because we've got to do this for the long haul, and it's not going to be easy on any of us. And I think the more we micromanage, the less we lose, a little less trust from our teams.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. That's yeah, spot on. I think that's, Pam and I were talking as we were prepping for this, that's exactly sort of, we're at that almost the exact same place of our staff did the same thing. We sprinted, got a bunch going, and now, you know, just yesterday I had the aha, like, oh, now we're just sort of back to being who we are, right? So for those of you that are sort of entering into this, or, you know, I think this is something we can talk about at further meetings, is we're back to where we are, right? I need to have the same sort of meetings. I need to be having my one-on-ones. I need to be encouraging those people that, you know, don't take initiative. I need to encourage them to take initiative. I need to honor the way that we work, and sort of take that marathon approach. You're right, it's different. And I think there's some things that we can learn as directors from the people that work for us. I think it's really important that we listen to them. Pam had mentioned the roundtable about working from home with kids, right? And I think as leaders, we have a big responsibility to try to meet people where they're at and support them. I think another topic that'll be interesting for us is this concept of tracking. And maybe there's something there that we could do some more conversations around, is how are we effective? How are we proving our worth? How do we support our staff feeling like they don't have to justify their very existence in a time when they're scared for their jobs? And then how do we as directors lead up and prove our worth to our bosses when we're scared for our jobs, frankly? My guess is there's a lot of us that feel that way. So I think the last thing, I want to end on some positive stuff here.
Hey, Alex,
no,
can I connect to that? Yeah, can I connect to that comment you just made about, say, directors wondering about their situation?
Yep.
You know, I would like to speak up for Jordan and baby boomers, but I will be curious, and I'm not asking this, we don't have time for people to respond unless you throw it on the chat, of course, but are campuses putting in incentives for early retirement? Of course, I would be interested in that. Many others would not. Although, if that is the case and more directors start stepping away, given that opportunity, does that open up opportunities for others once hiring does start up? Because I don't think that campuses will immediately hire for that position. They'll try to save money, maybe for a year, by letting someone in their staff take that on. But it also might be an issue for NIRSA. Now, NIRSA will be fine if I'm not around, but there are some other leaders that if all of a sudden they take that opportunity, they're no longer engaged. We're not worried about it. Our young leaders are more effective than we are now anyway, but it just might be a role that is a group of people that might be stepping away. I'm not saying I am, but just saying.
Laura Hall, you said you had a comment, and Kevin George, I appreciate your comment there.
Yeah, Alex, it's Laura from Penn State. Just really quick, I wanted to share something one of our staff came up with that has really gained some positive energy within our department, and it is for our staff who might be living on their own. We're just developing some basic framework for how to support staff like that should they get sick. And it has really been appreciated. I'm thinking some others have likely done the same, but if anybody's interested, happy to share what we've got going on offline.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Laura. I'm going to scroll up here on the group chat who just made this nice comment. Yeah, Kevin George, you made it earlier too, and Cindy Wright had commented something there about, the need for social connection is strong, right? And that is one of our wheelhouses. And I think that approach and that lens is going to be really important as we move forward. And a lot of people have been commenting here about how students are telling you that they value the community, right? Like the online learning doesn't work for them. My daughter's here and like, she's not, she loves me, but she'd rather be in college with her friends. And so I think that's a good thing for us to remember and to really capitalize. And as we think about our programming, to remember that community connection is really, really important. So thanks, Kevin and Cindy, for pointing that out, and for others, and to keep hope with that your students and your community, your faculty, your staff, they want what we offer, right? They want the community we build, the well-being we're promoting more so than ever. So it's almost time to double down on what we're doing. So Pam, do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, just to thank everyone. I've written a couple ideas down for future roundtables, maybe something around positive psychology, certainly something around recovery and reopening when we get a little bit closer to that. So keep the ideas coming, because we're certainly happy to host as many of these as you all find useful.
Yeah, and
fill out your survey.
Yeah, fill your survey. And I would say also, if Laura Hall or if somebody feels like they're championing something, tell Pam. I can help facilitate that too. But tell NIRSA, like, hey, I think people would really benefit from this. As I think we're going to be looking for content for a while, right? A little bit more of a marathon now, and so there's a lot of good experts out there doing the work. Please don't hold those close to your chest. I think that was our approach with Stacy today, is to get some content experts who feel like they're doing good stuff and just want to share it. And remember that don't downplay what you're doing. It's probably really good, so don't be shy to share. And I think we'll try to find ways to keep doing that. True, Pam?
Yeah, very true. And we also need a little direction around, you'll continue to find these more open and broad-based directors roundtables useful, or if you're ready to have them more focused on a particular topic area. Really, that's up to the community to direct. So if you want to throw your thoughts in the chat or email me, like I said, we'll continue to host these as long as you find value in them.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody so much. Please hang in there. Please take care of yourself and your staffs. Really appreciate this community in particular. It's been a great help to learn from everybody, and we look forward to seeing you again. So have a great day, everybody.